He was born into rock royalty, but the truth about George Harrison's son will leave fans stunned. In 2025, Dhani Harrison has made choices that even his father's most loyal followers never saw coming. From bold musical experiments to surprising personal revelations, he's carving a path few expected. Has Dhani honored the Beatles' legacy, or finally broken free from it? As the only child of George Harrison, the quiet Beatle, and Olivia Harrison, née Arias, George's second wife, Dhani was destined to live under the shadow of greatness. Yet as he grew, he found his own artistic voice, one that honors his father's influence while reflecting his own modern sensibilities. When Dhani celebrated his 46th birthday in 2024, it marked not just another year of life, but nearly half a century of carrying forward a unique musical and spiritual lineage. From the very beginning, even Dhani's name carried meaning and depth. Unlike what many people mistakenly assume, Dhani isn't a nickname or short for Danny or Daniel. The name is deliberate and symbolic, deeply rooted in the Indian classical music traditions that George Harrison cherished so much. The word Dhani refers to a pentatonic raga in Hindustani classical music, a melodic framework that gives structure and emotion to Indian compositions. A raga is not just a scale, it's a living mood, a musical idea that evokes certain feelings, times of day, or seasons. The Dhani raga, known for its gentle and introspective sound, reflects serenity and spiritual depth, qualities that George himself sought throughout his life. The name also subtly connects to the Indian solfège system, where notes are not named do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, do, as in Western music, but sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. When you take the last two syllables, da and ni, you get Dhani. It's a clever and elegant nod to George's love for Indian philosophy and music, something that became a defining part of his life after his friendship and collaboration with Ravi Shankar. So, Dhani's name is both musical and spiritual, representing a bridge between East and West, tradition and innovation, much like his father's artistic journey. Growing up at Friar Park, the Harrison family estate in Henley-on-Thames, Dhani was surrounded by creativity, introspection, and, inevitably, the echoes of Beatlemania. While George Harrison had long stepped away from the public eye by the late 1970s, his presence in Dhani's early years was rich with music and artistry. Instruments, recording studios, and sounds from around the world were part of daily life. However, George and Olivia were careful to give Dhani a childhood that felt as normal as possible under extraordinary circumstances. George was famously private and protective, and he raised Dhani away from the pressures of fame, instilling in him humility and a deep respect for music as a spiritual practice, not just an industry. Shiplake College, an independent boarding and day school near Henley-on-Thames, just a short distance from the family's home at Friar Park. There, Dhani's interests began to broaden. He joined the Combined Cadet Force, CCF, a British youth organization with military-style training designed to build confidence, leadership, and discipline. The experience gave Dhani a sense of order and teamwork, traits that might seem at odds with the stereotypical image of a rock musician, but which later proved essential when he led his own band and collaborated with producers, engineers, and composers. Despite his father's fame, Dhani didn't coast through life on his family name. When it came time to pursue higher education, he chose a path that surprised many. He attended Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, one of the Ivy League's most prestigious and intellectually open institutions. At Brown, Dhani studied industrial design and physics, an unconventional combination that merged the analytical with the artistic. It was here that he began to develop the mindset of a problem solver and inventor, learning how to visualize complex systems, design elegant solutions, and think creatively within structured frameworks. This background in design would prove to be more than a passing interest. After graduating, Dhani landed a position at McLaren Automotive, one of the most iconic car manufacturers in the world, renowned for its Formula One engineering and high-performance vehicles. Working at McLaren was no ordinary entry-level job. It was a position that demanded precision, creativity, and technical mastery. Dhani was involved in car design and aerodynamics, exploring how art and physics could coexist in perfect balance, much like how melody and rhythm must work together in music. The sleek lines, curves, and functional beauty of McLaren's designs mirrored the kind of harmony that Dhani would later seek in his compositions. Dhani Harrison's entry into the professional music world was not through the glitz of record deals or glamorous performances, but through the bittersweet task of helping his father complete his final work. In the late 1990s, George Harrison had been quietly working on what would become his final studio album, Brainwashed. By then, George was battling cancer, and though he had remained active and creative, his health was declining. It was during these fragile yet profoundly intimate months that Dhani stepped into the studio beside him, not just as a son, but as a trusted collaborator. Inside George's home studio at Friar Park, music and emotion intertwined. Dhani had grown up watching his father record, but this was different. The sessions for Brainwashed were deeply personal. A father passing down not only melodies but lessons about life, sound, and the essence of art. George had long been meticulous in the studio, layering instruments and vocals with spiritual purpose, and Dhani absorbed everything. As the two worked side by side, Dhani began to understand how deeply music was woven into the fabric of his father's being. Sadly, George's illness progressed faster than anyone hoped. When he passed away in November 2001, at just 58 years old, Brainwashed remained unfinished. The world mourned the loss of a Beatle, but for Dhani, it was the loss of his beloved father, mentor, and friend. And yet out of that heartbreak came a mission. Dhani took it upon himself to complete his father's final musical vision, an enormous responsibility that could have overwhelmed anyone, especially a young man new to the professional music world. But Dhani approached the task with a mixture of reverence and courage. Working closely with producer Jeff Lynne, who had been George's longtime collaborator and a fellow member of the Traveling Wilburys, Dhani helped bring Brainwashed to completion. Together, they meticulously pieced together the remaining arrangements, vocals, and instrumental layers, following George's detailed notes and recordings. Dhani wasn't simply a bystander or assistant. He became a creative force in his own right. He earned a co-production credit alongside his father and Lynne, and his fingerprints are all over the finished record. Musically, Dhani played acoustic guitar on 8 of the album's 12 tracks, lending a delicate and faithful touch to the arrangements. He also contributed electric piano to several songs and added backing vocals to 4 tracks, blending seamlessly into the ethereal harmonies that defined George's later sound. The result was a moving and cohesive album that felt authentically Harrison, spiritual, reflective, and filled with understated beauty. Songs like Any Road, Stuck Inside a Cloud, and Rising Sun stood as a testament to George's enduring optimism and artistry, even in the face of mortality. When Brainwashed was released in November 2002, it was met with critical acclaim and emotional resonance. Fans and critics alike recognized the album not only as George's graceful farewell, but also as a symbol of the unbroken bond between father and son. The title itself, Brainwashed, reflected George's wry humor and philosophical perspective on modern life, while Dhani's presence ensured that his father's message reached the world as he had intended. But Dhani's role didn't end there. In the year following George's death, he became deeply involved in organizing and performing at the Concert for George, a monumental tribute event held at the Royal Albert Hall in London on November 29, 2002, exactly 1 year after George's passing. The concert brought together an astonishing lineup of George's friends, collaborators, and admirers: Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, Eric Clapton, Billy Preston, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, Ravi and Anushka Shankar, and many others. For Dhani, Standing on that stage, surrounded by his father's musical family, must have felt like a surreal continuation of George's world, one in which love and music intertwined beyond life itself. During the performance, Dhani played acoustic guitar, often appearing calm and focused, echoing his father's quiet intensity. To the audience, it was as if George's presence was still there in spirit. Paul McCartney captured the sentiment perfectly when he told the crowd, "Olivia said that with Dhani up on stage, it looks like George stayed young and we all got old." Indeed, Dhani's resemblance to his father, in face, voice, and gentle demeanor, was striking, adding to the emotional weight of the evening. The concert became one of the most heartfelt tributes in modern music history, celebrating not only George's songs, but also the peace and joy he brought into the lives of those around him. Dhani continued to honor his father's legacy in the years that followed. When George Harrison was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004, Dhani once again took the stage, performing the iconic "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" alongside Tom Petty, Steve Winwood, Jeff Lynne, and a surprise appearance by Prince. The performance became legendary, especially Prince's searing guitar solo, but it was Dhani's presence that anchored the performance in authenticity. As he strummed his guitar and smiled through the emotion of the moment, it was clear that he wasn't simply a guest among legends. He was a part of the continuum, representing George's enduring influence. Not long after, Dhani began carving out a path that was uniquely his own. He didn't want to imitate his father or live off the Beatles' legacy. Instead, he wanted to explore a modern, experimental sound that blended rock, electronica, and alternative influences. This creative vision finds its home in a project called Dhani No. 2, a name deliberately unconventional and understated, a reflection of Dhani's humility and his interest in avoiding the spotlight. Dhani No. 2, pronounced the new number 2, began as a collaboration between Dhani and Oli Hex, a drummer and visual artist. The name itself was inspired by the classic British TV show The Prisoner, symbolizing rebellion against conformity, a fitting theme for an artist determined to stand on his own terms. The band quickly gained attention for its innovative fusion of sounds, electronic beats layered with live instruments, atmospheric guitar work, and introspective lyrics. Their debut album, You Are Here, 2008, was Dhani's bold statement to the world that he was not merely following in George Harrison's footsteps, but forging an entirely new direction. The record was immersive and textured, filled with both haunting melodies and digital experimentation. Tracks like Another John Doe and Choose What You're Watching showcased Dhani's knack for combining social commentary with sonic depth. Critics noted that while traces of his father's spiritual sensibility lingered in the background, Dhani's approach was distinctly modern, raw, layered, and experimental. Then came The Fear of Missing Out, 2012, the band's second studio album, which pushed boundaries even further. The title itself captured the anxiety of the digital age, a reflection of modern life's overload of choices and distractions. Musically, it was more electronic and ambitious than its predecessor, weaving in distorted synths, digital samples, and pulsating rhythms. Dhani's voice, often compared to his father's for its warmth and tone, carried a detached, introspective quality that suited the album's themes of alienation and connection. The Fear of Missing Out established Dhani No. 2 as a forward-thinking act, blurring the lines between rock band and art collective. But Dhani's artistic curiosity didn't stop there. In 2010, he formed a supergroup called Fistful of Mercy, alongside Ben Harper and Joseph Arthur. The trio's chemistry was immediate and organic, their harmonies rich and soulful. Their debut album, As I Call You Down, was a stripped-down, acoustic-driven project that leaned heavily on emotional vulnerability and lyrical depth. The record was filled with lush three-part harmonies, blending the folk-rock warmth of the 1970s with the intimacy of modern singer-songwriter sensibilities. Songs like Father's Son and Restore Me demonstrated Dhani's versatility. He could move seamlessly from experimental electronica to heartfelt, roots-based music without losing authenticity. Having explored collaboration through bands and supergroups, Dhani eventually turned inward, channeling his personal reflections into solo work. In 2017, he released In Parallel, his first fully solo studio album. The title hinted at the album's essence, a record that exists in parallel to the past, the present, and perhaps even his father's influence. It was deeply introspective, with Dhani describing it as a soundtrack to a daydream. The songs blended ambient textures, electronic layers, and orchestral arrangements, creating a cinematic soundscape that reflected the duality of modern life, at once human and digital, organic and synthesized. Tracks like All About Waiting and Admiral of Upside Down revealed Dhani's growing confidence as both a songwriter and producer. He was no longer stepping out of George Harrison's shadow. He was standing in his own light. In 2023, Dhani released Inner Standing, a record that continued his evolution as a boundary-pushing artist. Rich in atmosphere and layered with philosophical themes, the album explored human consciousness, perception, and self-awareness. Its sound design drew from both modern electronic music and traditional instrumentation, echoing the balance between East and West that has always been central to the Harrison legacy. Inner Standing reflected a mature artist, one who had reconciled his influences and experiences into something uniquely his. Outside of his albums, Dhani has also become a respected composer for film and television, a field that perfectly combines his love for structure, emotion, and storytelling. Working closely with sound engineer and producer Paul Hicks, Dhani has contributed to a variety of cinematic projects. Together they scored films such as Learning to Drive, 2014, a quiet, character-driven drama starring Patricia Clarkson and Ben Kingsley, and The Divide, 2011, a dark sci-fi thriller known for its haunting atmospheric music. Their partnership extended into television as well, with Dhani and Hicks providing evocative scores for projects like Outsiders, 2016 to 2017, Dogs, 2018, and the acclaimed true crime documentary The Case Against Adnan Syed, 2019, which revisited the story made famous by the Serial podcast. After years of cultivating his own musical identity and creative projects, Dhani found himself at the crossroads of technology, entertainment, and heritage. His pivotal role in bringing the Beatles, rock band, to life would not only honor his father's legacy, but would also ensure that millions of young people, many of whom were born decades after the band's breakup, would experience the Beatles' magic for the first time, through gameplay, not vinyl. It all began with a chance encounter. Dhani, who had long been involved behind the scenes with Apple Corps Limited, the company that manages the Beatles' business interests, happened to meet Van Toffler, then the head of MTV Networks. MTV had recently purchased Harmonix, the studio behind the massively popular Guitar Hero and Rock Band series. These games allowed players to simulate performing on stage by hitting notes on color-coded controllers shaped like guitars. However, despite the game's growing cultural footprint, the Beatles' music had never appeared in them. The reason was simple. Apple Corps had been notoriously protective of the band's catalog and image. For years, they had resisted commercial uses of the group's songs, fearing overexposure or a cheapening of the brand. But Dhani saw things differently. He recognized that rhythm-based games weren't just fads. They were powerful tools for cultural education and musical discovery. For a generation raised on screens rather than stereos, this was an opportunity to bridge the gap between 1960s artistry and 21st century technology. Seeing the potential, Dhani took it upon himself to advocate for the idea, becoming the bridge between two worlds that rarely met: the careful, legacy-guarding custodians of the Beatles' estate and the fast-moving, risk-taking executives of the gaming industry. Convincing Apple Corps to approve the project was no small task. The company's leadership, including Olivia Harrison, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and Yoko Ono, were understandably cautious. They feared the game could commercialize or trivialize the band's image. But Dhani's passion and clear understanding of the project's artistic potential made the difference. He worked tirelessly to explain that the Beatles rock band wasn't about gimmicks or profit. It was about celebrating the music and introducing it to a new generation in an interactive, emotional way. He emphasized how the game could visually recreate the evolution of the band's history, from the raw energy of the Cavern Club days to the psychedelic brilliance of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the rooftop farewell at Apple Studios. Each level could become a living, playable time capsule. For Dhani, this was storytelling through immersion, allowing players not just to listen to the Beatles, but to become part of their journey. Eventually, after much discussion and hesitation, Apple Corp gave its blessing, largely thanks to Dhani's persistence and credibility. Once the green light was given, he worked closely with the developers at Harmonix, contributing ideas and ensuring that every detail, from the visual design to the sound mixing, maintained the authenticity and dignity of the Beatles' legacy. His background in industrial design and his experience as a musician gave him a unique edge. He could speak both the language of engineers and artists. When the Beatles rock band was released in 2009, it was nothing short of a phenomenon. Critics hailed it not only as a technical marvel, but as a deeply emotional experience. It allowed players to perform classics like Hey Jude, Come Together, and Here Comes the Sun in stunningly rendered environments, complete with historical accuracy and artistic flair. The game wasn't just fun, it was reverent. Every note, color, and animation was crafted with love and respect. The success was staggering. The Beatles. Rock Band sold millions of copies worldwide, introduced countless young fans to the group's catalog, and became one of the most acclaimed rhythm games ever made. For many teenagers in the late 2000s and early 2010s, this was their first real encounter with the Beatles' music. Not as distant legends, but as living, playable icons. Dhani's vision had come to fruition. He had turned a family legacy into a cultural revival. What do you think about Dhani Harrison? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.